All right. Dr. Gainsbrugh, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirby. So excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. Just to provide a little bit of context for the listeners today. So Dr. Gainsbrugh has a really inspiring and amazing story. She was born in Haiti, which is actually the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and raised in the inner city of Miami. But obviously, she worked extremely hard to become a doctor then and put herself through school and earned her doctorate degree. And in the process, accumulated $500,000 of student loan debt. So through searching through ways to pay off that debt as fast as possible, she discovered short-term rentals and now owns 18 luxury short-term rentals, some of which make 15 times as much as they would make as a long-term rental. And one of her properties was recently featured on a Netflix TV show, which I definitely want to hear more about. But before we get into that, I'd love if you could just kind of fill us in a little bit more on the details of how you transition from doctor to luxury vacation rental owner and manager.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, you just gave the long and short of it for sure, Kirby. So really excited to be here today. And I so appreciate all of the time and energy that you put into this podcast to provide this content to your community. So thank you for that. A lot of individuals I know who are looking to transition from their W-2s or maybe cut back a little bit, find a lot of value in this content. So first of all, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just want to fill in a little bit. So in the process of my husband and I, us working to pay off student loans, we actually found Dave Ramsey and we did the debt snowball, the rice and beans, the picking up of the extra shifts. And it's kind of towards the tail end when we had all of that under wraps is where we discovered real estate investing and we went all in. So initially we're looking at ways to get into real estate investing in the most, I would say, cost-effective, affordable manner. And so you got to remember a full-time job and then maybe a side, part-time as well. 2 kids, a whole husband, 3 dogs, trying to navigate where to start with investing. It became really clear to me early on that I was not going to be the best fit for a fix and flip because that's a whole project management situation, right? Mm-hmm. I may not necessarily be the best fit for wholesaling, right? And so just went from, I would say strategy to strategy, consuming a lot of information, whether it's Bigger Pockets, your podcast, all the podcasts to figure out, where is it that I would be able to find that secret sauce of investing, but still trying to get back to maintaining some type of a life and a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I discovered the returns that I could get on short-term rentals was far more superior to any of the asset classes that I had evaluated at the time. And so this is from driving all the way to Alabama to take a look at this $17 house that glimmered in the sun in the photos, and you get there and it's falling apart. The roof is like practically off of the house. And so definitely understanding yourself, knowing your talents. Neither my husband or I are handy, right? We can change a light bulb. That's the extent,
Fix people, not houses. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're a carpenter or something, it's going to be a different story. But just kind of really knowing yourself and understanding yourself, we realized quickly we would need to potentially start with something that maybe needs a little bit of lipstick and not much more than that. And so in 2019, we found our first property and it was not too far from where we were located. We really understood the market. We knew what the numbers would yield, and we knew that this was just like a slam dunk of a deal. And the previous owner, unfortunately, had passed away, and the trustee was a relative from out of state. So they clearly did not know that they had priced the house too low. And so we pounced on it. We asked for no contingencies and we won that. And that's really where the journey started.
Wow. Where was that one?
It was actually in Peachtree City, Georgia, which is south of Atlanta. So in a like higher cost of living neighborhood, A+ schools, really nice neighborhood.
Nice. And how did you come across that one?
Believe it or not, it was a Zillow alert.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. It was a Zillow alert and we saw the number. We're like, oh, this can't be right. And so we just went ahead and called And they say, yeah, that's what they're asking for it. And it's not, it wasn't the same environment as today of a bidding war, but there are people hemming and hawing around it, investors from a little bit further away who may not have known what a gem that they had. It was 0.2 miles away from our primary residence where we were staying. We're like, it's right there. Very familiar. And so we pounced on it and we got it. It did need a roof, which was new to me, it did need a roof. And we went in expecting that, but still the equity was there for sure.
Yeah. Wow. And did you, when you saw that, did you call the listing agent directly, or did you have a buyer's agent that you were working with?
That's a great question. I actually think I called the listing agent directly. That was listed on the listing on Zillow.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a strategy that I talk about a lot. And that's actually how I've gotten the last probably 6 properties that we've done, is just an alert, just like you said, like in the city that I'm targeting. And when it pops up, I call the listing agent directly. And a lot of times, it's state by state, different rules and stuff. But in most cases, they can double end the commission, if they represent you as the buyer and the seller. So they're very motivated to get you into that property, to show you the property, to potentially put in an offer. And especially in this type of environment, that makes a big difference to get that leg up on the competition. So that's awesome. So can you kind of share a little bit about what that deal looked like then? How did you know right from the start you're going to use it as a short-term rental, or did you figure that out afterwards?
Yeah, I knew right from the start because I had done the math, again, for the different investment strategies. I knew I didn't want to do long-term rental. I didn't want to deal necessarily with, tenant issues and evictions and that kind of thing. I was sold out on short-term rentals. Like I said, I consumed about 2 years worth of podcasts and learned as much as I could. And I was sold out on short-term rentals. And so while we're working on closing on this home, I was already sourcing places to get furnishings and so on and so forth. So we purchased the home for $289,000, $290,000. Nice. And the 4-bedroom house, 3-bathroom. It did need a roof, so $10,000. We removed carpeting, got a great deal, and so we were in about $12,000 or so.
Wow.
Not too much. And then we found an amazing estate sale that a designer was throwing. And so this is a home that had all just amazing textiles, all of the drapery, just really, really high end. She was moving to the beach, a beach condo. That was a studio from like a 5-bedroom home. We walked in. We told we have $12,000. We'll take everything. Nice. And that's a deal for, furnishing an entire 4-bedroom home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And also not having to run around. I mean, the time you saved in sourcing everything in one location, that's huge. Wow.
Yeah. And the property appraised for $420,000, which is really good.
Before you purchased it?
Right afterwards, right after we purchased it, right after we put on the roof, we went ahead and got it appraised because we were looking at doing a cash out refi. And so, $420,000, which is incredible. And we expected it to do well. Again, knowing your market is key, right? Understanding where you're investing is key. And so I definitely knew my market that I was in. And so it was incredible because when we first listed it, and sometimes you have those self-limited beliefs, So when we first listed it, as we were going through the process of putting it together, I all of a sudden had a feeling of dread, like, oh, I wonder if anyone will rent it out. This was our first venture. And so I had to kind of tell, Betty, I call her Betty, the naysayer in my little mind, be quiet, Betty. We've already gone through this, and understanding your exit strategies is really important. So I had to tell myself, remember, you can always, shift it and turn it into a long-term rental and still cash flow. It's not going to be as lucrative, but you'll still cash flow. Or if you have to sell it, you have all this equity. So you're already winning. So relax,
Right.
take a deep breath, and just talk myself off the ledge because some of those things do creep up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed that also contributes to a lot of people when they first start doing this, they price it way low because they're like, well, as a long-term rental, it would make this. So as long as I'm making a little bit more than that, then I'm good. And they don't realize they're actually leaving a massive amount of money on the table in a lot of cases. We did that for our first property, probably our first couple properties. And it takes a while to get used to. No, actually, short-term rentals can make multiple times more than a long-term rental. So, how did that go for you when you first listed? Did you start getting bookings right away? And was the pricing strategy correct, or what did you?
Yeah.
What did you do
So
there?
I did start getting bookings right away. The pricing strategy, like you said, was not exactly correct, but what I wanted to do was to make sure that the weekends, I use a strategy formula to make sure that the weekends, if it were to be rented primarily over the weekends, would cover the mortgage, would cover all of the expenses. And I started there and I kind of crept my way up. And so for that market, I would say an unfurnished rental would generate around maybe 1,500 to 1,800 a month. And that was in 2019. Of course, now, prices have gone up.
Yeah.
But with that property, we're generating anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000, even up to 8,000 a month as a short-term rental, which was great.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow. And the occupancy has been pretty high on it.
Yeah, occupancy. I like my occupancy, especially in the larger properties. And that's something that I do focus on, larger properties. I like it to be about 65 to 70%, because when I did the extrapolation, having done this for multiple properties, if I get too close to the 80% range, then my product kind of, I would say, it's not the best product, and I don't have enough time in between to revamp it up. So if I need to do a deep clean, I need that time in between. So overall, I'm not making more money by keeping the occupancy up, which is different, right? From a long-term rental, you just want to be 100% occupied as a long-term rental. As a short-term rental, my sweet spot and where I make the most money, you got to look at the levers, is at about the 65 to 70% range.
Interesting. Yeah, that is. And I think it's really, it speaks to you knowing your ideal guest as well, because you're in more of the luxury market. And so I think the expectation is going to be higher too. So having that extra time to make sure every detail is perfect, as opposed to, a more affordable short-term rental, I think probably you could get away with less of the details. Probably, obviously you still need to provide a great experience for guests, but their expectation probably isn't going to be quite as high. So that's the first one then. So, I mean, to go from 1 to 18 now, since 2019, you guys were on fire. How did that happen? Like, so after that first one, were you just off to the races, or can you kind of talk through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will tell you that I did get a partner. I started working with a partner as well, and a woman from a mastermind that I was a part of. But we did quickly scale to 4 of our own. And then we got a partner, we got one more, and then we host for others. So we do co-host as well. So 18, not all of them are owned by us. I want to make that correction.
Yeah.
So we're at 9 properties owned and 9 properties that we co-host for others as well, in the markets where we have our systems developed. And so the second one, oh my goodness, the second one was absolutely insane, because we, again, same market, we purchased a property there. And what was interesting is that this is a house that, as a single family home, it was being rented out at $1,800. The owner had moved out of state, and to take advantage of a tax write-off, she had to sell it within a short period of time. It was on for sale by owner, made a deal with her, and got this particular one for $462K. And so it's much, much higher, of course, than the previous one, but I just couldn't believe the potential on this home. And so I went for it. And this is a property that sat on 2.5 acres that had been subdivided. And so we're looking to add another property on this particular lot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but put in about $30K worth of work into it. A little bit more lipstick, nothing too crazy. But what was interesting is at that point, I had started learning more and more about using a dynamic pricing tool. And so I turned on the dynamic pricing tool after all was said and done. The house was furnished. I was ready to go. And the aha moment for me was when the pricing tool listed the property. I was going to do 30 days just to start off because it is a larger home. Listed it for $28K for 30 days. And I said, okay, obviously it's broken. And, the algorithm, you have to kind of train it and teach it. So before I turned it off to start tweaking it, someone rented it out for $28K for 30 days. And then the next month, it rented out for $15K. And the next month, $22K, then $21K. And so I'm a little girl from Haiti, right? We said that already. Let's let that breathe for a second. And so in my mind's eye, the previous property was renting out from, 6 to 8K. And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, 8K to 10K. Dare I try 10K? No, let's just start with 8K because that would be insane. Who would, want to rent something out for 10K, right? So again, my self-limiting beliefs. Well, guess what? The dynamic pricing tool does not have any self-limiting beliefs. It's not from Haiti. There's no emotion based on the rental availability in the area, based on the demand, based on all of those factors that it took into consideration. It priced it there. I don't know why. And it rented out and it's been performing insanely ever since then. Yeah. And so I had to think to myself, where else in my life do I have these limiting beliefs, right? Because there's no way I would have ever imagined it performing that well. Just absolutely insane.
Wow, that is unbelievable. So I guess why did you go with the 1 month strategy? And who was your ideal guest? I mean, who's renting it for 30 days at a time?
So it's really interesting. The reason I went with the 1 month, I just needed to get my feet under me from just a very fast-paced renovation. I said, I'm going to put it for 1 month. Let me figure out what the numbers are, just to give myself a little bit of a breather. Okay. But I fully intended on renting it out for 2 night stays, but working to get my cleaning team geared up, just kind of ramping up. So that was my little ramp up. I'll put it for 1 month, but definitely we'll ramp it down to 14 days and down to 2 days. That's not necessarily a strategy that I recommend, but that's what I needed for me at that point.
For sanity. Yeah.
For sanity, precisely. And so we actually, I don't know if you're aware, but Georgia is now called the Hollywood of the South, or Yollywood. It was actually an executive director of a major zombie TV show that rented it out for a month. And thereafter, believe it or not, it was insurance guests. So guests who were displaced from their home due to insurance, and they were larger families that were placed in a hotel for a few days, but they really needed a home comparable to their living conditions, their normal living conditions.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's great. There's a couple different, I think, takeaways here for people. Number one is one of the biggest pushbacks I get for short-term rentals is that wouldn't work in my area, but people go through insurance issues on their personal houses in every market. It's not like, well, this is just, unique to Georgia. People have fires in their houses or remodel their houses or whatever, and need a place to stay. And so this would work in most markets. And then the other thing was self-limiting beliefs, like that brings that like I kind of mentioned, it brings the price point so much lower for people than it should be. And, I tell people to pay attention to the market and price their property based on the comps in the market and not use a pricing tool right up front. But this might change change my strategy a little bit or my suggestions for for people getting started, because without it, you probably wouldn't have priced anywhere close to 28,000 for that first month. So that is yeah, that's incredible. So what, I guess, so going from that then to your next one, what metrics did you start looking at? Like, were you just looking at like highest nightly rate or cash on cash return, or how are you determining then going forward what types of properties to target?
Yeah. And I did want to kind of circle back and revisit something you mentioned a second ago, Kirby. You said, this is Georgia. Yeah, this isn't a beach town. This is suburban, just Georgia, suburbia. Yeah. Like, seriously, this is not a mountain or a lake vacation type of market. So definitely, yeah, it can be done in any market. People are displaced due to hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, floods in their homes. And so being able to market your property as family friendly. And one thing that we immediately pivoted to, because, luxury, initially we were not, interested in pets, although I have pets, but we're like, oh no, the pets, they're going to just, right. Oh no, we pivoted real quick to pets. And that really, oh, absolutely. Your guest avatar is going to let you know what they're looking for and what they want. And so once we rejected and declined about 12 requests for pets, we had to say, wait a minute. Is this navigatable? Is this figure outable? And so I actually reached out to the local pet boarding place. I forget what it's called, the kennel or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I asked about their nightly rates. And when I realized how much money I was leaving on the table, I was like, oh no. So we got a 30% increase by housing pets. And individuals are traveling not with one, but with two pets a lot of times. And so imagine them boarding them up somewhere. That's not inexpensive, right? Yeah. And so that's an opportunity definitely to, you don't have to add the whole price point on, but it's an opportunity to capture some of that revenue. And so I'm a spreadsheets girl. I am very much into the data. And so the next place I wanted to go is to identify which markets, like you said, had the highest gross revenue potential. However, had the lowest cost of entry, so lowest property valuations. And so that's really the two levers that I pull all the time. And that led me to look into the Poconos, and that's where I met a few friends. And so there was a property there, no kidding, it needed some work, $175K. That generates over six figures a year. Again, large multi-family, large single family home, but that caters to large multiple families like cousins and sisters and brothers, which are my guest avatars. So when you have all of these adults with their spouses and their children, and they're splitting the cost or kind of splitting the risk for those, larger rentals, now you have 3 or 4 responsible adults splitting $1,200 a night. I know it sounds outrageous. It is outrageous for one person, but if you have 4 families splitting that, it is not at all very bad. So that's why I focus on those larger homes, 5 to 8 bedrooms. That is my sweet spot.
Yes, that was actually the other point I was going to make earlier. When you talked about the larger properties, the nightly rate is exponentially higher. And I've noticed the same thing in my market. This summer, I'm investing in very affordable vacation rentals, and we got over $1,000 a night for part of the summer, and I was blown away because I was like, this is an extremely affordable house. But you're right, it's exactly what you said. It's always like, oh, we're traveling with my aging parents and my brother and his kids, and so it's very affordable for multiple families to stay, and they love it to all be under the same roof and not have to get multiple hotel rooms. So that's awesome. So you moved up there, obviously very different management from having it right next door to your house to, the other side of the country. So how did you adapt to that?
Yeah, with a lot of pain points, right? So started off with a co-host helping out, and then had to really build out a team, because when you have more than one property, in that area, and the the fact that it's a little bit more rural, some of the properties are actually a little bit more of a rural area, workforce becomes a big concern. And so onboarding a team, having a lead, then having them help recruit others to come and help out was a big factor in there. And then so did connect again with a gal from a mastermind that I was a part of that lived up there as well. And so that really helped a lot. And the management is definitely different when it's remote, but there's definitely things you can put in place. You know, you can do definitely make sure your noise level meter is installed in your property. You have those cameras, the Ring camera on the exterior of the property, remote locks. Those are the three staples in all of our units to get that code change between guests as well. And so those are really the staples and the levers that I pull to make sure that, you know, the property is being monitored and taken care of.
Got it. And in terms of your boots on the ground team, is it just a cleaner and handyman, or how do you make up that team?
Yeah, so boots on the ground is a cleaner and a handyman for sure, but I do have virtual assistants as well, who, although I talk about how I'm monitoring the cameras and all that, they're monitoring the cameras. Got it. As an extension of me, they're responding to guests, and they only escalate when needed. And so the boots on the ground definitely are the cleaners and the handymen. And what's great about, you know, cleaners, and they definitely are the backbone of the business, right? I hope everyone recognizes that the cleaners, they make or break your business. Yeah. And so you have to make sure that you're treating the cleaners very well. They're very much an important part of the business. So they oftentimes double for me as errand runners. If something's missing, they help with the linen pickup, linen drop off at the, you know, industrial laundromat. So they do take care of a lot for me.
Got it. Okay. And so you're obviously you're managing these yourself because you're managing them for other people as well. Mm-hmm. How did you transition from owning your own properties to then deciding that you were going to take on the management responsibility for other owners as well?
Yeah, I don't know if it's something that was intentional. I actually know it wasn't very intentional. I wish I had a story to show you my mind map of how I had it all planned out. No, it was just, you know, as you communicate with investors, they see what you're doing. And if they're, you know, investing in that particular area where you're in, they would reach out, you know, say, hey, do you think you can help me with this as well? And so if it was a property that I would evaluate something that makes sense for our team, makes sense for our brand, then I would move forward with it. So a few things, of course, I would definitely interview the investor. I have to love the investor and they have to love me too, right? So that's a part of it. Like we have to have a good relationship because I initially got really excited and I would accept any property. And so I fired a few investors and they fired me too simultaneously. It just was not a good relationship. Yeah. And that's a pain point. You got to have a good relationship. They need to understand, you know, what it is that you're trying to do. You share the information, you set expectations. If you're not into being micromanaged, you know, they need to kind of understand what the boundaries are. So the boundaries were every month, we're going to have this phone call and we're going to talk about all of these things. Do not look over my shoulder and breathe down my neck. And so it got to that point, Kirby, I'm being full transparent there. Because, you know, again, I was very excited, you know, I was, oh my gosh, I could build this whole other business also. But I learned early on, it's just not worth it. If it just doesn't make sense, if it doesn't light you up, if it doesn't bring me joy, you know, why do it? And so I'm very, very particular now. And so it's not that I'm trying to build out a whole property management situation. It's just that if it makes sense and an investor reaches out to me and we have a good working relationship, I'm open to it.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I was asking partly from a selfish standpoint too, because I've been approached by several vacation rental owners that they want to own the property. They don't want to manage it. They're kind of in my area and they want me to manage it. And so far I've turned them all down to this point. But and it's based on exactly what you're talking about. I just don't want another boss. I don't want, anyone looking over my shoulder saying, well, why'd you respond to that guest with that instead of saying this, or that person canceled, like, that's your fault. And, I just like, I know the numbers are going to be good for them. But at the same time, I just don't want that to have that liability, but it sounds like you can set it up in a way that you don't have those pain points, I guess.
Yeah. So one thing you mentioned a little bit earlier, Kirby, which I thought was really important, and I hope your audience doesn't miss it. You asked, about guest avatar, right? So just like you need to know who your guest avatar is, you need to know who your investor avatar is too, right? So if it's that mom and pop and this is their first property and it's so precious and they're holding, no, that's not going to work. That is not going to work automatically. But if it's that investor with 10 properties and they just say, send me my check, that's someone I'm willing to have a conversation with. No offense, mom and pop people. I love you for it, but let me tell you.
Yeah. Too much emotion, right?
Too much emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So how does one get a property featured on Netflix? What show were you on? And then how can we watch that show? Check it out.
No, absolutely. It's insane. I'm still under NDA. They're launching it this spring, allegedly. And so again, healthcare professional by day, no idea about media, barely could hang on to social media without a lot of help. And actually AirDNA, which I'm sure you're very well aware of, it's the data scrape tool for Airbnb and Vrbo. They reached out and they said that they were really interested in showcasing one of our properties, and they have this casting crew that it will be interviewing different property owners and short-term rentals, and they highlighted our property. I was like, oh, interesting. Nice. And so we went for the interview. We got casted. It was really tough in terms of like the back and forth, take a picture of what you're wearing here, take a picture of it, and go in this lighting. It's like, it was a lot. And so they selected us. We were selected. So they came. It was a whole day of filming, a lot of back and forth. And then they flew us out to New Mexico to the set of, it was interesting, but that's the set where they filmed the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So they flew us out there. And so we did more there. And that was it. So it was really just AirDNA reached out, which was weird and interesting. So I wish I had like a secret sauce to tell you, okay, I did these 3 steps and I got in. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened there, but it really had to do with the revenue we're generating for sure on the property.
Yeah, I think that it brings up an interesting point about short-term rentals. I think probably part of the secret sauce is just having a really great property, but short-term rentals in general lend themselves to like really unique and cool opportunities between just the guests that come and stay and opportunities for the properties themselves. On our first one, it was our personal residence. So we had the basement listing, and then we would actually list our whole house together with the basement when we'd leave, for a long weekend or whatever. And we had a casting director reach out from Chicago who wanted a lake house to film this, I forget what network. I think it was an HBO show.
Cool. And
they were going to rent the entire house, which for a fee that we thought was insane. I think it was like $30,000 for a month or something like that, which we were like, that's nuts. And they were going to move out every bit of our furniture and store it, move in this whole set it all up and move everything back in. And they said, if any spec is out of place, when they move it back in, they will repaint, they'll retouch up everything. Like, it was really cool. They ended up not doing it, but we had a lot of back and forth with them about that. And these things just kind of like similar to what you're talking about, they can just come up because it's just, they're always filming things. They're always needing cool places. And so that's awesome. Very cool.
Absolutely.
I'll be interested to hear what show it is once that can be released.
Yeah. Watch party, right?
Yeah, exactly. Nice. So if you want to know, follow Dr. Gainsbrugh on social media, and then you can, I'm sure you'll post when that comes out.
Absolutely.
Cool. So you've recently transitioned yourself from full-time job to living off rentals, and you kind of have a unique full-time job, one that you've spent a long time in the making of. So how did that transition happen? We were just talking a little bit before the episode started.
Yeah.
So can you talk through a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I, of course, went forever for many, many years. Got my doctorate in pharmacy. So I was a pharmacist for years and years and years. And so as I was growing this short-term rental portfolio, and just based on the numbers that I was just sharing with you, Kirby, a few minutes ago, I mean, imagine you have a mortgage that is $2,500, per month, and you're generating 22,000 or 28,000 or something. Like, it's insane. And so my husband, he immediately went part-time, right? He's a psychotherapist. He goes, "Oh, I'm out."
Yeah.
And he had been looking at him. He goes, "You're still working full-time? Like, why are you still working full-time? That just, haven't you seen the numbers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting there. Just give me, 6 months." And so I dragged my feet because there was this identity, situation. And my identity was wrapped up in this degree, in this role. I had always wanted to be in the sciences and in the helping, professions all my life, and not exactly sure how I was going to transition out of that and maintain some form of sanity. And so I worked at the hospital for years and years, worked in the retail setting for years and years as well. And so, yeah, just wasn't sure. So of course I consulted. I'm a girl that believes in consulting with, wise counsel. I consulted with my wise counsel, some gals who had transitioned from medicine themselves, and they were doing, whether it's, I have a gal who has 500 million in single family. She scaled. Wow. Another who has 200 million in multifamily, and, and they were psychiatrists. They were, just, and how did you do it? I would ask them, okay, so how did you do it? And so the advice was, okay, one day you're going to go to, this restaurant, you're going to cry your eyes out, and that old you're going to leave her behind. And the new you, like, we're processing, we're coming up with, the whole situation. Cause I am ramping up for 2023, free in 23. That was my motto, free in 23, free in 23, but still suffering a considerable amount of burnout in the workplace. Just the burnout is real in healthcare. And I'm sure you can appreciate that. And so, yeah, just kind of ramping up to do that, every month, inching a little bit closer. So my goal was, by December, I would have been ready to go. December 2022, I'm going to be ready to go because I'll be free in 2023. But then I got an email that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And that was it.
Wow.
I said goodbye. That's it. And so it shows how ready I was to go. Like, there was no ceremony. There was no crying at a restaurant. There was no leaving I was done. I was so done. And it was insane. And I really wish there was a, story where it was a parade and they were like, carrying me off like a rave or something like that. No, it was one email, and that was the straw. I said, you know what? No, thanks. And so that's where I am in my life. I'm like in my no phase. I'm going to say yes to the things I love and then no to the things that I don't. You said it a little bit earlier, Kirby, you don't want, why would you want another boss? Why would you want to kind of be beholden to someone? And so I'm very, very particular about, everything that I participate in. I want to say yes to the things I love and no to the things that I don't. So
that is awesome. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this that dream about the day that they can get these emails and just say, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. But I tell people that a lot, that, that's the benefit of building your portfolio on the side, that you start to go to work in you carry yourself totally different when you go to work, because it's very rare to be able to leave your job one day, wake up and say, okay, I'm going to just quit my job. Like, most people build their side hustle, to get to a point where they can, smartly leave their job. And so as you're doing that, I feel like your whole attitude and the way you carry yourself at work changes because more and more you're becoming to a point where you're working because you want to be there and not because somebody's telling you to be there. And if somebody tells you to do something that you don't, think is ethical or something like that, previously it's like, well, I can't support my family if I don't do that. So the decision's a lot harder as opposed to now all of a sudden, you have the choice every day of being there or not. And like you said, if somebody sends you an email that, you just don't agree with, you have the ability to say, okay, well, if that's the way you feel, find someone else. And so that's an amazing place to be in. And since leaving, you feel like it was a good choice, good decision.
Yeah. And all of the consternation and the wringing of the hands, none of it happened. It's as though, I don't know. It's weird and it's kind of cathartic. I don't know. I don't miss it. I haven't missed it. And it's bizarre, but yeah, my voice and my advocacy definitely was shining throughout these last 6 or 8 months. So they were probably ready for me to go because I was like, well, does that really make sense? That's a lot for one person to be doing. And it may not have even been me, but I would be advocating for my colleagues because they were afraid to advocate for themselves, right? They really depended on the job. And I knew that I really didn't need it, but there was something that kept me there. And so for me to up and leave, one day, it shows that I probably stayed too long, right? It's like I was there too long. I could have probably left months and months sooner. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, very cool. So I'm interested then to hear, because I think a lot of people think of financial freedom as like, you hit this place of like, you're free, you don't have to do anything, and there's no risk anymore, and you can just kind of sit on a beach. But I still think about risk, even though I don't have a full-time job and we have great cash flow coming in. Obviously things can change, markets can change, interest rates go up, obviously, as we're seeing. How do you look at risk when it comes to your short-term rentals? Like, how do you judge that when you're buying them? And like, do you have like backup plans? And, is it like if the market changes or people stop renting on Airbnb or whatever?
Yeah. So one thing that I think is really important, and I know it's not going to be really easy to find these days, but I'm a girl who loves cash flow and equity. So for me, a big risk mitigator is equity. And so, I don't want to be glib, because right now it's not very easy to find equity. And if you can't find equity, my suggestion is making sure you have cash reserves, whether it's, stored away in some type of fund somewhere. So risk for me is money, making sure you have backup cash reserves or equity, because that's the great thing about real estate, right? If you have equity, you can still make something happen, I think.
Got it. Yeah, that's a great point. I talk a lot about, like, because of the affordable vacation rentals we're buying, that we can switch them to long-term rentals and they'll work just fine as long-term rentals. I think once you get into the luxury market, it's harder and harder to do that. So I think that's a great great point of view as well. If you're buying something a little higher end, do you have equity, or have you thought through your cash reserves that if you can't rent it for 6 months, you can still sustain, and get through tougher times. So that's a great point.
Yeah, that's very true. So I would say about half of the portfolio as a long-term rental would still cash flow, but the other half, no one's going to rent something long-term for $9,000 a month, right? So that's not going to be your typical. And so not for a 12-month lease or anything like that. So for those properties, I want to make sure that there's a lot of equity, or we have cash reserves to support them.
Got it. Nice. Well, this is great information. Last question before I let you go here. What's your goal now? So now you've transitioned. I mean, you're able to manage 18 and work a full-time job. Now all of a sudden you have an extra 40 plus hours of time freed up on your hands. So now what's your goal from here?
I really wish I had 40 plus hours. Oh my goodness. So I have allowed myself to get overbooked on so many things. I'm super excited though. So I do have speaking engagements. I've already spoken on stages last month live, which has been absolutely amazing. And back in June, quite a few of my colleagues at the hospital and family and friends, they had been asking me to help them to get into short-term rentals as well. So I created a little digital course, and that has blossomed into this amazing coaching and mentorship program that I'm super excited about. So just focus primarily on busy professionals. Again, my niche is healthcare professionals, just trying to teach them an extra revenue stream. So I do have the good fortune of helping about 40 or so hosts launch their first short-term rental, find, furnish, purchase, and host their first guest. And so to me, financial literacy is financial health is, health too. And so that type of wellness is really important to me. And that is my journey, is to impact the lives of over 1 million women to teach them how to do this as well. So that is my goal.
That is awesome. Very worthwhile goal. So if somebody's listening to this and they want to find out more about that, what's the best way to get in touch with you or find out?
Yeah, so I actually host free teachings on a weekly basis in my Facebook group. So if you go to rachelbnb.com, that's rachelbnb.com, you'll get access to my Facebook group. And I like that little redirect because the name of the Facebook group is forever long. It's like luxury real estate investing, financial independence, short-term rental. It's got like all the words for busy professionals. So I'm going to do better and shorten that up a little bit, but rachelbnb.com will get you there.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, very cool. I'm going to check that out. And I encourage others to as well. I appreciate you taking the time here. I got a lot out of this, and it's always interesting to hear how others do this business, because it can work on so many different levels. So that's what I love about it. So I appreciate all the advice today.
Thank you so much, Kirby. I can't tell you how grateful I am to be here with you and to share with your community. Thank you again.